Okay, so welcome back, guys. Our app is taking shape, but before we go too far, I want to talk about best practices when you are writing code. Now, I've already talked about all of this in class already, and I've given you guys a long list. But just for the sake of this video, for those of you guys who didn't join the class, I just want to go over some of those concepts, some of the things that I gave in class very quickly. And the first thing I talked about in class is the folder structure. I mentioned that one of the things that make your code very clean is the folder structure. How you are arranging your files, how you are arranging your folders, how you are putting your different files into different folders, and how you are connecting every single one of them. So if you look at our app now, we have our SRC folder, the config folder, controllers, middleware, models, routes, and our app.js that is serving our routes. So again, I also mentioned that this is not the only way you can do it. If you don't want this approach, you can always have a different approach. But one thing you should make sure you do is that no matter what, your code has to be separated into different modules. So the code has to be separated into different files and different folders. It really will not make any sense to be working and you have everything inside of one file. No. I also mentioned in class that you can have your services folder. You can have a services folder that serves as a place where you store your business logic, the business logic of your application. So at the moment we are keeping everything in our controllers folder. That's why you are seeing all of this. But if in another code, in another project, have a services folder where we put our business logic and then link our controllers to it. So in that project, the services folder is going to have the business logic. The controllers is going to serve as the middleman that is connecting the routes to these services. So the controllers folder connects the routes to the services. So the services folder is just where all of this action is taking place, and then the controller folder is just connecting to it, making calls to it, just connecting to it. The same way we are using our routes here to connect to our controller. That's the same way we'll connect to our services folder, and then we can now display information back to the client. So again, it does not have to be this approach. All I'm just trying to say is it does not have to be this approach. You can work with any approach that is convenient for you, but just make sure that you are separating your files into different components. Another thing you should make sure you do is you work with .env file. You work with your .env file. Earlier on in the program, we were coding information in our code. We are coding secret keys in our code, and I mentioned that that is a very terrible move security wise. You don't want to have your sensitive key, you don't want to have your API key or any of that sensitive information, your sign-in key, your JWT key. You don't want to have all of this hard coded into your code in your code, because anybody can have access to your code and see all of these things. So if you are uploading to GitHub or anything, you should always make sure that you are putting all of your files inside your .env file. And you are putting your sensitive information, sorry, inside your .env file. So even if anybody sees your code from there, they don't know what DB username is for. They don't know what DB password is. They are only seeing process.env.db username. This is much better than seeing all of your information. And again, as much as possible, while you are deploying your app to GitHub, always make sure that you don't push your .env file to GitHub. That is also a very risky move, because especially if you are pushing to a public repository, anybody can see your code, anybody can open your .env file and see all of the information, all of the keys that you are trying to hide. So I mentioned that the thing to do is you create a .gitignore file, .gitignore file, and then you put your .env in like this, so that anytime you are trying to push to GitHub, it keeps your .env file. It ignores your .env file, if I can say. It does not push your .env file to GitHub. So that is very essential. And then I also said that when you are writing your API, as much as possible, do not use callbacks. If you can use promises, use async await. Don't use callbacks, because callback can be very bulky. It can make your code very very bulky. It can make your code very difficult to debug, especially when you start trying to track errors. It can be very bulky, because the moment you are nesting errors, it is difficult for you to look to know which one you can to know where each different error is, so that you can get access to it. So as much as possible, try to use async await. If you look at our project here, we are using async await. And I mentioned in class that the Node.js gives us the ability to convert any call back into a promise that we can use ASIC wait for. If I import util, mention this in class, that if I import util is a package that I can use to convert any. So if I have promisify equals util.promisify. So what util.promisify does is it helps me to take any code that's any function that requires a callback. I can convert it to a promise, and then I can use my dot then or dot catch, or I can use my async await to work with it. So as much as possible, work with async await. If you are going to use callback, it should be only when necessary. So callback makes your code very bulky and it can be very difficult to debug. Another thing I mentioned is that as much as possible, again, if you are installing a third-party package, let it be third-party packages that you are very sure of, third-party packages that you know. Do not install packages just for the fun of it. Don't install packages because you think they will solve your problem. No. So install packages that you are sure you are going to use and you are sure that they don't have any malicious code written underneath to get your sensitive information. And then the last thing I'll talk about in this video is make sure you also always catch your promises. Don't keep your users waiting. Don't keep your front-end developers stranded. If there's any error, catch your error. So you see in my code here, I'm using my try catch statement. So use your try catch statement or use your dot catch to catch your error, display information to your proper information to your users to your client, so that if your user is seeing that information, if they are trying to sign up and their username exists or their sign up their email exists, they can know. But if you are not catching the error, they don't know what is going on, and if you are not sending proper messages back to the client, they don't know what is going on, and they don't know why they are not able to sign in. In the next video, I'll talk about more tips. So I'll see you guys in the next.